New heated footage between Jude Bellingham and Argentina's players is going viral, after cameras caught the England star confronting them moments after the final whistle. But the clip only shows part of what sparked the tension. Here's what really happened. Let's start with the moment everyone's talking about, because it's the reason you clicked on this video in the first place. After Argentina defeated England 2-1 behind a stunning late rally, Jude Bellingham did not appear to take it well. The 23-year-old England midfielder capped off a contentious loss with a heated exchange with multiple players in the minutes after the final whistle blew. After the game, Bellingham was standing by a group of celebrating Argentine players when he suddenly walked toward the group and slapped one of the reserves, Valentin Barco, on the back of the head. It happened while Barco wasn't even looking his way. Argentine left back Valentin Barco was seen running out onto the pitch, directly in front of the England team to celebrate, when England attacker Jude Bellingham, who himself had an incredible tournament, was filmed slapping him on the head. Barco had no idea it was coming. What happened next is the part that turned a single moment into a full-blown scuffle. Barco pushed Bellingham after that moment, and then Argentina defender Nicolás Otamendi also shoved Bellingham as well. That's two Argentina players now physically engaging Bellingham within seconds of each other. The details of exactly how it unfolded matter here, because this wasn't a clean one-on-one. Barco reacted by squaring up to Bellingham, and was backed up by former Manchester City defender Nicolás Otamendi, who shoved the England midfielder. Bellingham was then held back by Ollie Watkins. England's reserve goalkeepers, James Trafford and Dean Henderson, stepped in to help calm the situation. So we're talking about at least 6 players from both sides, physically involved in trying to keep this from boiling over completely. And Barco and Otamendi weren't the only Argentina players who ended up in the middle of it. Footage from BBC also caught the moment, and showed Bellingham and Barco being split up by Nico Paz, before Nicolás Otamendi rushed in and pushed Bellingham away. Nico Paz, a teammate of Barco's on the Argentina squad, was the one physically wedging himself between the two players to stop things from getting worse. That's 3 separate Argentina players with hands directly in this situation. Barco reacting, Otamendi shoving, Paz separating. And it didn't stop with them. Morgan Rogers was also involved in a scuffle after the game, as was Henderson, as England's players finally snapped under provocation from their Argentine counterparts. Rogers seemed riled up by something substitute keeper Juan Musso said, but referee Ismail Elfath ushered him away as he tried to confront the Argentine. So even Argentina's reserve goalkeeper, Juan Musso, ended up pulled into the chaos through a separate confrontation with Rogers. Now here's what makes this whole situation land differently than your average post-match scrap. This wasn't Bellingham's first flashpoint of the night. The incident came after Bellingham had a few separate confrontations during the match. Earlier in the afternoon, Bellingham also had words with Rodrigo de Paul. After Argentina went up 2-1 2 minutes into stoppage time in the second half, Bellingham and Lionel Messi also had an exchange of words in the match as well. So by the time the final whistle blew, Bellingham had already clashed verbally with 2 more Argentina players, de Paul and Messi himself. The Messi exchange in particular had already caught fire online before the post-game scuffle even happened. Cameras caught World Cup superstars Lionel Messi of Argentina and Jude Bellingham of England shared a hysterical exchange during Wednesday's semi-final match in Atlanta, with an animated back and forth between the two that had fans buzzing hours before anyone even knew about what would happen at full time. That earlier exchange with de Paul carried its own edge too. That was far from the only time Bellingham's frustrations boiled over into confrontation. Earlier in the game, he had exchanged apparent trash talk with Lionel Messi. And after Argentina scored a go-ahead goal in the 2nd minute of stoppage time, Bellingham started joying with Rodrigo de Paul in the center circle. So de Paul becomes the 2nd Argentina veteran, alongside Messi, that Bellingham tangled with before the final whistle. Put it all together and you've got Bellingham crossing words or hands with at least 5 different Argentina players in one night. Messi, de Paul, Barco, Otamendi, and indirectly Paz stepping in to break it up. Plus England teammates Rogers and Henderson dragged into their own separate flashpoint with Musso. That's the scale of what went down in Atlanta, and it's exactly why the footage exploded the way it did. The confrontation itself was brief. Barco immediately reacted by pushing Bellingham, creating a brief confrontation before the situation could escalate further. As tensions rose, Argentina midfielder Nico Paz quickly stepped in to separate both players. His intervention prevented the exchange from developing into a larger altercation, while other players from both teams also moved toward the scene. Within a few seconds, the confrontation had ended, allowing Argentina's celebrations to continue while England's players began leaving the field. A few seconds captured on multiple broadcast angles and it was over. but those few seconds are still being replayed on loop right now. To understand why this specific moment blew up into a night full of confrontations, you have to look at what actually happened on the scoreboard and what it cost England. The match had been building toward exactly this kind of ending all night. Shortly after the second half, England went 1-0 up after a goal from Anthony Gordon, sending the crowd into a frenzy. However, the jubilation was short-lived, with Enzo Fernandez getting an equalizer in the 85th minute, and Lautaro Martinez sealing England's fate with a goal just before the full-time whistle. England had done the hard parts, they led, and then it slipped away in the cruelest possible fashion in stoppage time against the reigning champions. This wasn't a random loss either. It was England's exit from a tournament they'd built real belief around. England's 2026 FIFA World Cup campaign came to a heartbreaking end. After a 2-1 semi-final defeat to Argentina in Atlanta, the Three Lions were just one match away from reaching their first World Cup final since 1966. But a dramatic comeback by the defending champions ended their hopes. Emotions boiled over immediately after the final whistle as Argentina's players celebrated their place in the final. 60 years of waiting gone in the final minutes. For Bellingham personally, the timing made it worse. He'd been the best player England had all tournament, right up until the one game that mattered most. Bellingham, who had been excellent throughout the tournament, struggled on Wednesday. The midfielder was held to 0 shots or chances created, and didn't get any touches in Argentina's box. He was also on the receiving end of some tough tackles, including one by Messi that did not get called. A tournament of highlight reels ending in a performance where he barely touched the ball where it counted. His numbers on the night tell the same story. During the semi-final match, Jude Bellingham started and played 90 minutes, recording 0 goals, 0 assists, and 0 shots. Compare that to what he'd done just days earlier to even get England this far. He scored twice in Miami on Saturday as England came from behind to beat Norway. Additionally, Jude also grabbed a brace during a brutal round of 16 tie against Mexico. As a result, those goals meant he is the first player to score twice in consecutive knockout matches since Diego Maradona in 1986. He was the story of England's run. And then, in the one match that would have sent them to the final, none of it showed up. What people saw on his face right after the final whistle backs up just how hard that hit him. After England blew their 1-0 lead over Argentina in the World Cup semi-final, Bellingham stood on the pitch, shocked at what he had just witnessed. After months of preparation, 6 goals of his own, and a lead into the 80th minute of play today, the Three Lions just could not get the job done. He wasn't just disappointed, he looked completely blindsided by how it ended. And that emotional collapse was visible well before the Barco incident. Post-game, though, Bellingham appeared to be going through several emotions after the loss and was crying as he left the field. The tears came first, the slap came seconds later. 2 reactions to the same gutting result, playing out in real time in front of every camera in the stadium. Then there's the detail that's fueling half the debate online. That Barco wasn't some rival who'd been running his mouth all game. At the current time, it is unclear whether or not 21-year-old Valentin Barco said anything to Bellingham that provoked a reaction. He was a substitute, he hadn't been on the pitch clashing with Bellingham like Messi or De Paul had. As Bellingham processed the loss, a group of Argentina players were celebrating right next to him. Barco just happened to be the one closest to him when it happened. That's part of why the clip cuts so differently than a typical on-field flare-up. The guy on the receiving end wasn't even part of the story until that second. Some reporting has floated theories to explain the trigger anyway. Some observers suggest that verbal exchanges on the pitch may have sparked the retaliation. Whether or not that's true, nobody involved has confirmed it publicly. So far, neither Jude Bellingham nor Valentin Barco has made any official statements about the incident. No explanation from either player, just the footage speaking for itself spreading everywhere. Once the clip got out, it didn't stay contained to football accounts. It became one of the biggest sports stories on the internet within hours. The controversial footage quickly went viral across global social media networks. Fox Sports broadcast cameras captured the initial confrontation from multiple stadium angles. Multiple camera positions meant there was no single ambiguous angle to argue about. The footage existed from several vantage points almost immediately. Spanish-language outlets were actually first to zero in on the clearest shot. Footage obtained by Spanish outlet Diario AS showed the angle of Bellingham hitting Barco particularly clearly. Diario As posted their clip with the caption calling it El Enganchan de Bellingham con los Jugadores de Argentina tras el final. Roughly, Bellingham's scuffle with the Argentina players after the final whistle. And that post alone racked up massive engagement within the hour. British broadcasters weren't far behind. Match of the Day's own account posted footage captioned "Full-time frustration for Jude Bellingham and England at the final whistle." That combination of two major outlets from two different countries, both circulating their own angles of the same clash within the same hour, is a big part of why this spread as fast as it did. The reaction wasn't just retweets and reposts either. Outlets across multiple continents ran their own versions of the story within hours of the final whistle. Reports came out of the UK, Australia, South Korea, and across South America, all covering essentially the same 40 seconds of footage from slightly different angles and with slightly different quotes. That kind of simultaneous global pickup is rare for a moment that happened off the ball, after the final whistle, in a game that had technically already ended. Part of what kept the clip alive online was the visual contrast built into it. On one side, you had Argentina's players in full celebration, shirts off, dancing in front of their fans. Argentina players, many with their shirts off, jumped and sang in front of their fans after their win over England. Their elation was there to be seen by all. On the other side, in the same frame, you had England's players frozen. England players stood in shock in the middle of the field. A sizable chunk of their fans left immediately when the match ended. That split-screen effect, one team celebrating, the other collapsing, and then violence breaking out at the seam between them, is exactly the kind of moment that's built to travel on social media. There's also a wrinkle to this story that added extra fuel to the online conversation, even though it's technically a separate incident. During the same post-game celebrations, Argentinian players were also photographed, parading around a banner in Spanish that read "Las Malvinas son Argentinas," which translated from Spanish reads, "The Malvinas are Argentine." The phrase refers to the sovereignty Argentina has claimed over the Falkland Islands, which Argentina occupied in 1982, only to lose a war to the British over. That banner started circulating right alongside the Bellingham clip, and the two stories got tangled together in a lot of people's feeds, even though they involved different players. FIFA's rulebook doesn't leave much room for ambiguity on banners like that one. FIFA and the International Football Association Board, which sets the rules for the game, have a clear policy when it comes to political messaging. Equipment must not have any political, religious, or personal slogans, statements, or images. And players must not reveal undergarments that show political, religious, personal slogans, statements, or images, or advertising other than the manufacturer's logo, IFAB's rulebook states. The rulebook goes further on consequences too, stating that for any offense, the player and/or the team will be sanctioned by the competition organizer, National Football Association, or by FIFA. So Argentina now has its own separate cloud hanging over the celebration, on top of everything involving Bellingham and Barco. None of that dampened the spread of the slap footage though. If anything, having two flashpoints from the same night meant the story had multiple angles to be shared and reshared from. Football fans who didn't care about the Falklands banner cared about the slap. Fans who'd already moved past the slap kept the banner conversation going. Between the two threads, the single post-game period turned into arguably the most discussed non-goal moment of the entire tournament. With the footage everywhere, the conversation quickly shifted from what happened to what happens next. Specifically, whether Bellingham is going to face any real consequence for it. The uncertainty starts with a basic fact: officials on the pitch that night didn't see it happen. The issue is that Bellingham could face post-match disciplinary action for this incident. According to reports, the match officials did not directly witness Bellingham striking Barco. That detail matters enormously for what comes next, because it means any punishment would have to come from a review process rather than an in-game decision. That's exactly the process now being discussed. This process does not depend solely on what happened during active play, and can also include incidents that take place after the match has ended. One of the biggest questions now is whether FIFA's disciplinary committee will examine the television footage showing the confrontation between Bellingham and Barco. The images have circulated widely and appear to show the England midfielder making contact with the Argentina defender before both players were separated. If FIFA decides that the footage merits further review, it could become a key part of any disciplinary investigation. In other words, the broadcast footage that made this go viral is the exact same footage that could end up in front of FIFA's disciplinary panel. As of right now, nothing has been confirmed. For now, FIFA has not confirmed that an investigation has been opened. The governing body will first determine whether the incident requires disciplinary proceedings, before deciding if any sanctions should follow. So the process hasn't even formally started. It's still at the stage of whether it starts at all. British outlets have been reporting on what a possible sanction could look like if FIFA does move forward. According to The Sun's reporting, Bellingham could even face a suspension. In that case, he might miss the third-place playoff against France. That match is the very next game on England's calendar, so a ban would land immediately and publicly. But that same reporting was careful to note this isn't a done deal in either direction. However, there is also a possibility that no actual disciplinary action will be taken. The outlet added that there are also predictions, suggesting FIFA is more likely to let the incident go without any measures, and noted another possibility is a fine penalty, which could potentially be imposed conditionally. FIFA has not yet responded to related inquiries, so the range of outcomes on the table right now runs from nothing at all to a fine, all the way up to a suspension that would keep him out of England's final game of the tournament. There's also a strange wrinkle in the timing that's shaping how people are talking about this. England is already out of the World Cup. It's unclear whether Bellingham will be punished for the action, given that it happened post-game. So a lot of the intrigue isn't really about whether England's chances get hurt, since that ship has sailed. It's about what kind of precedent FIFA sets for a high-profile player, caught on camera in a moment like this, with a global audience already watching the replay. That question of precedent is what's kept outlets circling back to this story, even as the news cycle moves on to the final itself. As of now, there has been no official announcement regarding any disciplinary action related to the incident. Whether FIFA reviews the post-match confrontation remains to be seen. For the moment, the images have become one of the most talked about moments following England's semi-final defeat, adding another chapter to an already emotional night in Atlanta. Until FIFA actually rules one way or the other, this stays an open thread, one that could resurface the moment any announcement drops. So where does all of this leave Bellingham, Barco, and everyone else who got pulled into that scrum on the Atlanta turf? For Argentina, none of this changes what's directly in front of them. With the win against England, Argentina have now lined themselves up for a World Cup final against Spain this weekend. Whatever gets sorted out with FIFA over the post-game incident, it happens in the background while Messi, De Paul, Otamendi, Barco, and the rest of that squad prepare for the biggest match of the tournament. For England, the picture is very different. Their tournament is over, and the only game left is one nobody wants to play. England is set to face France in the third-place match on Saturday, a dead rubber fixture that's now carrying extra weight, because it might double as the match where any suspension on Bellingham would actually be enforced. The broader context around England's exit adds another layer to how this moment is being read. This wasn't just one bad half for one team. Outlets have pointed to a pattern of ill-tempered exchanges across the whole 90 minutes. During today's match, several tense confrontations occurred between players from both sides. England and Argentina players clashed as early as the 3rd minute of the first half, and again in the 37th minute due to rough play. So the post-game scrum wasn't an isolated flashpoint. It was the final beat in a match that had been simmering from kickoff. As for Bellingham himself, the picture right now is somewhere between disgrace and sympathy. Depending on who you ask, there's no getting around what the cameras caught. Jude Bellingham found himself at the center of controversy after England's heartbreaking 2-1 defeat to Argentina in the FIFA World Cup 2026 semi-final, with the Real Madrid midfielder appearing to slap Argentine player Valentin Barco. During a heated post-match scuffle, the England star then appeared to hit Barco on the back of his head, sparking an angry reaction from the Argentine. That's the version of him the footage shows, and it's the version that's dominating headlines right now. But there's also the other side of that same frame, a 23-year-old who just watched a lifelong dream slip away in the final minute of a semi-final, in the exact tournament where he'd carried his team on his back for weeks. Both of those things are true in the same clip. The player who scored twice against Mexico and twice against Norway to drag England to this point is the same one who lost control of himself for a few seconds once the whistle went. Neither Bellingham nor Barco has said a word publicly since it happened. No apology, no explanation, no interview clips doing the rounds. Just silence from both men at the center of the footage, while everyone else fills in the gaps. That silence is arguably why the story hasn't slowed down. Without a quote from either player, the internet has been left to replay the same 40 seconds over and over, looking for something new in it each time. What happens next depends entirely on a decision that hasn't been made yet. If FIFA opens a case and comes down hard, this becomes the story. That follows Bellingham into the next tournament cycle, the moment that defined how his stunning individual World Cup ended. If they let it go, it becomes one of those clips that resurfaces every time England plays Argentina from now on, brought up again and again regardless of what the record books say. Either way, the 40 seconds in Atlanta aren't going anywhere. Barco, Otamendi, Paz, DePaul, Messi, Rogers, Musso, Henderson, every name pulled into that circle on the pitch, is now tied to one of the defining moments of this World Cup, whether they wanted to be or not. And until FIFA actually makes a call, that's exactly where this story sits. Unresolved, still spreading, and still the first thing anyone brings up.